You're listening to Real Folk with me, Jo Burke.
Yeah.
So hang on, I'm screeching some brakes on. Right. So how old were you and how did you get into the chorus at the Opera Sydney House?
So I was...
Opera Sydney House? Did I say Opera Sydney House?
Well, it is upside down. It's
Dear
on the other end of the
listener,
world.
you know what I mean. Listen to what I mean, not what I say. I quite like the Opera Sydney House.
The Opera Sydney House, yes.
So how did you get there, Kate?
How did I get that? Well, let me see. I was in Melbourne and I had worked for the extra chorus. So in Australia, there's state opera companies, and the main full-time opera company would travel down to Melbourne twice a year, and I would join the chorus there as an extra chorister, they called us. And then a job came up for a full-time chorus member. So I did an audition and was terrified, and I got in. So at that time they had 12 of each voice type, so 48 in the chorus. So I was one of 12 sopranos.
What are how many different types of operatic voice are there?
Well, in a chorus, you've generally got soprano, which is the highest female voice, which is my voice type. We've got, so then there's alto or mezzo soprano, which is the lower female voice. Then you've got tenor, which is the high male voice, and bass or bass baritone, which is the low male voice. So there's four sections for a chorus. In amongst all that, there's a lot of different types. So a soprano can be one of several different types. You can be a coloratura soprano or a dramatic soprano like me, or a lyric soprano.
So you're a dramatic soprano?
I'm a dramatic soprano. I'm very dramatic, yes.
I could tell.
Yeah, so we moved up to Sydney. I was married at the time, so my husband and I moved up to Sydney, and I was in the chorus there for 4 years. So 6 nights a week on stage, plus rehearsing every day. So it was very full schedule, but fantastic. I learnt so much, and I was only young, like I'd only been out of uni a few years, and it was an amazing experience. And I got to understudy some small roles, and I eventually auditioned for a young artist program in Queensland. So I then left the chorus and I did that, and then I decided to try my luck in Europe. So I moved to London. My mum's father had been born here. He was born in Bournemouth, so I was able to get a visa, and I came over and auditioned in Germany.
The thing is, in my head, when I think of opera, I think of the Sydney Opera House. See, I can say it.
Yes.
I think of that as the pinnacle. So you kind of started at the pinnacle, didn't you?
Well, yeah, I guess being a chorus star, it's a fantastic job, and it was full-time, secure, and I had great friends there. 2 best friends I still speak to every weekend. We were in the chorus together there, and it was just brilliant. But I had a real burning desire to see if I could become a soloist, and that was why I auditioned for the Young Artist program. And then when I came to London, I auditioned for English National Opera, and I got an understudy for a major role for my first audition, which was just amazing. And I felt like I was vindicated in my decision to come over and leave all that security and my family and everything. I left everything behind.
Really brave. What about your husband?
I left him behind too. Yes.
Did he mind? You're right, doll.
So separated from my husband and then moved over.
Well, I don't know if I need to go into that anymore, because you seem joyous about the separation from your husband.
It was a long time ago. It's more than 12 years now. So it seems a lifetime ago, absolute lifetime ago.
The pain has gone.
The pain has gone. Yes. Yeah, right. Definitely.
So it was a good decision. And also you said you were understudying here, and that always makes my spine crawl, because I just think as an actor, I've never gone up for an understudy of a part, and it's because I would feel more sick about being an understudy than I would about just having the main part, because it's every performer's nightmare, isn't it? Going on stage and not knowing what the fuck is going on, and everyone else having this well-oiled relationship and you just being stuck in the middle of it. So I think it's hugely brave.
I'd actually I'd understudied a lot of major roles for about, I did about 8 years at E&O. Then I was understudying Norma, which is sort of one of the really big soprano roles. We hadn't quite finished doing our rehearsals and it was the third night and the soprano got sick. So that was... So I went in.
I would have been over there with my first aid kit, making sure she was better.
Well,
rather than me have to go on.
It was quite amazing. I arrived for rehearsals at midday and there was no one there. There was no one in the rehearsal room and I didn't know what was going on. And then like a whole team of people came in and looking very serious to speak to me. They said, you know, the soprano is sick. Are you okay to go on? And I said, yeah, sure. And they said, what do you need? And I said, well, we might need to block the last act. So we did that.
I might need a nappy.
But it was amazing. That everyone was amazing. And I had to go and have a costume fitting and a wig fitting. And then I hadn't even been on the stage. So, and there was another show that was rehearsing. So we had to wait until that bumped out and they bumped in the set for Norma. So there was a big tree that I had to climb in the middle of it. And there was an axe I had to slam into the wall. And so I had to go through all that staging. And then
so you must have been just running on pure adrenaline.
It was
that show.
pure adrenaline, and it's a massive. I'd never sung the whole role through before because it's so huge, Norma. It's about the same size as singing 2 operas. It was quite a night. I had a great time. Once I got on stage, it was great. I felt so supported by the conductor and the rest of the cast and everything, and I had an absolute ball. And then I was on standby for the next few shows. So I was in the theatre the next few shows and watching it and sort of reliving it again and going, oh, that's right, that's where she's supposed to stand there, and things like that.
So do you think the leading lady, do you think it was one of those things where, oh my gosh, the understudy's done so well, I must make myself well immediately and get back on stage?
I think it's a financial thing. There's a lot of pressure because a lot of singers, you're not paid for rehearsal, you're only paid for performances. So you can do six weeks of. So she was from America, so she'd come over. She would have, you know, I don't know what her contract was, but often you're not paid for rehearsals. You have to pay for your accommodation and food and blah 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 blah, and then you're paid X, you know, so many £1,000 or whatever per performance. So if you don't do your performances, you'll be really out of pocket. But anyway, I did it.
Oh my goodness. That's amazing. So is that your career highlight?
I guess so. I sang in Germany. I sang a role, Vanessa, a Samuel Barber role, which I loved that role. It's such a kooky story in our production. She was sort of like an old film actress, and she'd been in love with this man, and he'd left her, and she'd waited for him for 20 years. She'd sort of covered all the mirrors and covered all the paintings
always
in
a
the
mistake,
house.
isn't it?
I
can feel it.
And
Never wait 2 minutes, let alone 20 years.
And
especially for a man.
I know. 20 bloody years. It was amazing. But he came back, and but it wasn't him. It was his son. And then so the story. It's a very interesting story.
Obviously, most operas are not written in English. So are you fluent in any other languages?
I've spent a lot of time studying German because I love the German repertoire, and a couple of my singing teachers have been in Germany and coaches, so I went to Germany frequently. Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm fluent, and I'm certainly really out of practice because I haven't been back.
So what do you do if you're not? Are you one of these people that, you know, you're only actually fluent if you're singing it? Do you have to bellow at people in restaurants and coffee shops?
Exactly, a lot of hand gestures.
You have to sing the German at them.
Exactly. Yeah, I'll throw a bit of English in there. Yeah. No, it's terrible. It's quite interesting actually being on the other side. I was in a small German town when I was working there, and not as many people spoke English. So it was quite interesting being on the other side of that, you know, as someone that doesn't speak the language in a city. We don't get that so often in our lives, or certainly didn't get it in Australia or here. I did this for E&O. We did this fantastic outreach a couple of times actually, and one of my favourites, we went into a few schools at like really early in the morning. It was like 8 o'clock in the morning or something, and we did these pop-up shows for kids, and they'd never seen opera. So we were there at their assembly, And one of my colleagues, she was singing the Queen of the Night aria, which you might know. It's that it's got the really high F coloratura in it.
Oh, I do. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
really.
I never know what things are called because I'm just one of those real, as I've mentioned earlier, Philistines who goes, oh, I love that tune.
But it was just amazing. And kids were screaming like it was a rock concert. Like they'd never heard anything like it. Because I think to hear live opera is just something extraordinary. People are so amazed that that sound can come out of a human body without any amplification. And the kids were they were in hysterics. Like they just couldn't believe it. And we sort of had little pop-up shows, little scenes for them during their breaks. So when they were moving classes and things, we had I did an aria from Norma, I did Casta Diva, and then there was another little pop-up we did, somewhere else in the school. So we did that for a few days at a few different schools.
That's amazing because, like you said, I think it's really important because certainly at my school, you weren't introduced to opera. I went to a very rough, comprehensive school that just churned you out and chucked you towards a Tesco's checkout, and that was it at 16. So definitely opera was a secret, but luckily my dad, despite us being low class, my dad was a massive fan of opera, and he absolutely loved Maria Callas and Marion Lanza, and so my childhood is filled with these sounds coming out. And he had one of those old record players that you used to be able to load up like about 15 or 16 vinyls, and do you remember the arm used to swing over and release them? So that's one of my earliest childhood memories, and of course I never knew who these people were. Amazing. And then as I got older into sort of early teens, I then hated it because it wasn't pop music and all he wanted to play was that. And I was like, oh no, Dad's playing that
bloody opera.
And then, and then you get to another few years later and you're like, oh man, he had some pretty amazing taste in music.
Well, my parents were really into disco. We had, I remember Diana Ross playing sort of endlessly, or Motown, all that sort of stuff. But my grandfather used to listen to whistling tapes. I remember there was some famous whistler that he used to listen to.
Roger Whittaker.
I don't know, but it was horrendous.
Why would you? I was just going to say, I mean, surely there can't be many whistling albums out there. Sorry, just going back to that. So where did your love for opera come from yourself then as well? That's an interesting...
Oh, gosh, I think it was... I mean, I learnt music, I learnt piano at school. My mum was a singer. She was a beautiful jazz singer, but she trained classically. And I'd had no interest in it. I was a total science brain at school. I went headfirst into science, and I just wasn't happy at university. I joined a choir. One of my friends at uni was in a choir, and I joined the choir. She was having singing lessons from someone or other, so I'd started having singing lessons. And then there was another girl in the choir, and she was auditioning for the conservatorium. And I thought, oh, that sounds really interesting and probably better than what I was doing. I was sort of looking at histology slides and things like that. I just wasn't very interested in my uni studies. I went and did an audition and I got in. It was amazing. I had no expectation. I was about 20 by then, and I just loved it. And I felt like I'd come home. Like it was all the people that were I was at WAPA, West Australian Academy of Performing Arts.
Called WAPA. I
WAPA.
love that.
I know, WAPA. Because I grew up in Perth.
I thought you meant something to do with Burger King.
All those friends that I met there, I still have today. Like we all ended up working together at Opera Australia, and
that's amazing that you say that as well, because I'm obviously talking to lots of people about their life stories, and the overriding theme already is that when you do step on that stage as a comedian or as an actor or as a dancer or as an opera singer, it is that sudden feeling of, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be. It's a bit like when people say love at first sight and people go, oh, it doesn't exist until it happens to you. And I think before I'd had that feeling, I think I always thought that was a bit of a myth as well, that there isn't that feeling where you go, oh, right, this is what I should be doing. This is what my life is about. But it's true. It does happen, doesn't it?
It really does. And I'm, no one was more surprised than me, because I'd always been quite a shy teenager. it took a lot for me to be comfortable on stage. It really wasn't until my final recitals at uni. I felt that I owed it to my voice to, you know, do my best and really give it a chance. Yeah.
That's an amazing statement as well, isn't it? So you found out basically that you had this amazing voice, but it was attached to initially a shy person.
Exactly.
And that you felt, that's just such a lovely phrase, that you owed it to your voice. I think it's amazing.
Well, yeah, my bloody voice, it's dragged me all the way over here as well. So
we love that lovely voice.
Don't know that it was really, I guess it's come full circle now, because I always had a real fascination with the way that the voice is produced for opera. That combination of that sort of acoustic or sciencey sort of side of it, I guess, and the mathematics,
the
almost,
geeky side,
music, the geeky side of it, yeah, with the artistic side of it. Like, it's just this I mean, opera is just the most incredible art form as well. It brings so much together. But for a human being to be able to stand on a stage with 2,500 people in the audience and be heard over an orchestra without any amplification, I was just always blown away. Like, I couldn't, you know, I didn't understand how that worked and how you got trained to do that. And that was,
it is incredible. And especially when you think now that there are, you know, the voice, I think, is being reduced in general, and I mean that on almost every level, really.
Yeah.
Especially for women as well. The ability to, like you said, just to stand there and tower and boom and project and, you know, fill the stage. It's incredible, isn't it?
It really is. And I think a lot about that connection between the voice, like women's voices as well, and being heard, and sort of my own journey of being quite shy and being heard. Yeah. And
so have you got any tips? Because I was also the same, actually. I mean, everyone presumes because I'm an actor and do comedy and a lot of my life is performance based now, that I was gregarious, and I wasn't at all. I was so shy that I was always in the movement of anything at school, which meant being completely at the back usually. And even though in Peter Pan, for example, I wanted to be Wendy so much. Aww. Every ounce of me wanted to be Wendy, but instead I was a shadow.
Oh, you would be a gorgeous Wendy.
I was too shy. And then when they did The Wizard of Oz, I wanted to be obviously Dorothy, but I ended up being a poppy in a sea of poppies on the stage because I was always just happy to be lost in it. But I was that little girl that was just knew all the lines of the lead and just absolutely wanted to do it, but it made me feel sick, the thought of doing it.
You know, it's so funny, because I'm doing my MA at the moment, and last week we had the day of lectures on music performance anxiety. It was just amazing to hear it all, because I remembered that feeling. I gave my first webinar this week. That wave of anxiety came over me again, because it was just something very different. I've never spoken for an hour about any sort of subject, you know, and to have to present a webinar was just terrifying.
So you think it never goes away then? So like you're just saying, although you stand on a stage in Sydney Opera House or, you know, take on from an understudy with a moment's notice a huge role, but given some notice to do a webinar, all of those same fears come back in again. Isn't it interesting?
Yeah, I think it's that imposter syndrome feeling that that's the worst thing for me, you know, like why would anyone care what I had to say, sort of that sort of feeling, imagining every bad thing that could go wrong, or, you know, feeling shame. It's that feeling of shame as well, that, you know, you might say something silly, or, you know, I don't know what could happen on a webinar, but certainly enough could go wrong on stage.
Exactly. The thing that I think is interesting is that most people probably presume that, even though you and I both happen to start off shy, and I think it's quite often the case actually, for a lot of performers, but I think also the other assumption is that once we've overcome it, that we're good to go in any scenario, and that you can just go, oh, you know, shove Jo in the limelight, she'll be fine at whatever thing. And it's absolutely not the case, you know, because the same as what you've just said, you know, we're good to go in our chosen professions, and that's absolutely fine. But if you take us out, because they're now our comfort zones. And I think that's the key to everything, isn't it? It's the stepping out of a comfort zone that causes all the anxiety again. And you get used to seeing people doing what they love and what they're used to doing, but you put that person somewhere else and they're a bag of nerves again. But also I think as well the fact that most comedians have died. I mean, is there an equivalent in singing?
Oh, yes, there is. This is the worst one I can think of that happened, not to me, but to a colleague I was singing with. And I was waiting in the wings, and he was supposed to come on and sing this big aria, and then I came on at the back of the stage. He just didn't show up, and the whole, they couldn't go, because normally the show will go on, like normally you would carry on, but there was no way we could continue without him. He was the main part of the scene. Never heard it before. The orchestra stopped, the chorus all stood still on stage. It was just silent, and I could only imagine what was going on backstage. I'm trying to find this poor guy. And then he all of a sudden, he like sort of arrived, and they went back to, his entrance, and they did all his aria, and it was just incredible. I thought, wow, that's something you don't see.
Do you know what had happened? Why was he not there?
I think he just hadn't heard his call or something. Like,
oh my God.
Yeah, so because you all have your dressing room with the tannoy, and you get your 5-minute call or whatever. And
that reminds me of a similar thing when I was doing a play in London, and because you get used to, when you're in a show, you're backstage with the same people every night because they're not on when you're not on. And I was backstage and I was having this really interesting conversation, and then I suddenly said to her, "Oh, it's been lovely catching up. We don't normally get a chance." And then we all just went, "Oh!" And then she was supposed to have been on stage, and it was for a phone call. So the poor actor on stage was sort of miming a telephone call with somebody that
oh God, it's awful.
But it was that moment of like, we were like, "Oh, it's been really lovely catching up. We don't normally do this now."
Oh God, oh my goodness.
And he was furious, absolutely furious, but also quite pleased because he sort of masked it really well. So I think
it
slightly
keeps
pleased that he
keeps
saved
you
the
on your
day.
toes, doesn't it? Keeps you on your toes. And the audience would have never known. That's what they
That's the thing, isn't it? That is the thing. But honestly, if you'd have seen that moment of realization dawn on us, where it's like,
the terror. Oh my goodness.
And then you have that moment. Then is it too late to go on? Or
exactly. What do I do?
What do you do?
I know. I got my shoe caught. Same show actually. I got my shoe caught in between. For some reason, like, it was a really raped stage, and for some reason it was like there were floorboards, but there were little gaps in between the boards, and my heel of my shoe got caught in one, came off, and I'm walking across, I'm singing across stage, walking across stage, and I thought, do I stop and go back and get it? And then I thought, no, I better get it because I needed it. Couldn't pull it out. Like, it was just like one of those. Really...
Oh no, you were arguing with it on the stage.
I know, it was terrible. Anyway, I yanked it out, eventually put it back on my foot, kept going. You just think. And the next day we had a talk. There was a group of school kids came, and of course that was the first thing they asked. What happened with your shoe?
That reminds me of that Morecambe and Wise sketch with is it Shirley Bassey or somebody comes down the stairs and her shoe gets caught.
Oh, God.
He puts his boot on her foot where a lovely shoe was.
I love Morecambe and Wise.
Genius, absolutely genius.
So funny.
Those are the greatest moments, I have to say. They are the good ones.
Yes. Live theatre. It's nothing like it.
Yeah.
Oh God, I hope we get back to it soon. Bloody hell.
I do too.
Miss it so much.
What do you do to sort of, and what have you been doing? You mentioned an MA. Have you been burying yourself in that?
Yeah, so when I was at my sort of crossroads, I guess, and I went home and did that format contract, and I was really thinking, what should I do? Like, do I go back to chorus work? Should I I was thinking about doing a master's in voice pedagogy, because I love teaching singing, and I've always loved
that. Say that again. That sounded like a voice Tamagotchi, was it?
Yeah, it's a video game. Yeah.
Is it?
So pedagogy is teaching, and voice pedagogy, particularly at the moment, is really looking at the science of singing and bringing that into the singing studio. So I've been very classically and traditionally trained as a singer for like 20 years. And I was really interested in looking at anatomy. Well, this is what I thought I was interested in until I had this incredible lecture on acoustics, and that has completely fired up my brain. I'm just absolutely loving it. So I've been looking at studying emotion and how emotion affects the acoustics of the voice and how we can use that in voice training for opera singers. And that's been an incredible journey. So I just did my thesis on that. That's what I was writing and researching while I was in lockdown. So that kept me busy and fairly sane.
That sounds really interesting. If you could go back and give your younger self any advice or words of wisdom, what would they be?
Oh my goodness. Have therapy early.
I love you. How early? In the womb?
Oh yes, in the womb. Yeah, definitely. As early as you can. Yeah, I wish I could go back and just say, let's just go and sort all this mental stuff out now, because I think I spent so much time agonizing and dealing with anxiety and depression and and always having a brave face. I think a lot of people just don't, you might say the same thing, that people do see the performer, they see the public personality, and it's all that goes on behind the scenes that we sort of deal with. So to have those tools at an early age, I think have been invaluable. Yes,
because it never goes away, does it? That's the thing, and never completely, but your coping mechanisms get better is how I feel.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, but strangely too, like I've found sort of performance anxiety in some ways, I don't know, maybe it didn't mean as much when I was younger or something. I didn't realize how important each experience was, and now it feels that I feel like there's more weight. I don't know, maybe I've just lost my sense of fun for it or something, but
yeah, I don't know.
Anyway,
I get what you mean. I think sometimes you sort of take things too seriously, and then that's detrimental to doing well at it, and detrimental to enjoying it, isn't it? That's the thing.
Yeah, I think, and you sort of, you get to a certain level too, and people expect a lot more from you, or you expect a lot more from yourself, and I think that extra pressure really feeds into the anxiety of it. And I don't know, it's less I don't know, less fun or something. I don't know. You're not so much on the road to discovery or potential. It's, well, this is it. This is my job.
Those feelings that you get, the sweating and the feeling sick and the heart rate. We immediately assume that we're massively anxious, but actually all of those things are adrenaline kicking in, and adrenaline kicks in for good reasons too, So
exactly.
So for
and it's being comfortable with being comfortable with that adrenaline and being able to work within that adrenaline is a really important lesson to learn. But and being able to recognize it off the stage as not being when it's not being very useful.
It is. It really is. I think one of the things that's always helped me is that before I'm going on stage to do stand up, for example, when you're terrified because it's a room full of people, you're supposed to be funny, it's a lot of pressure, and with my shows, I don't have to do them, no one's paying me millions of pounds or anything to do my shows. I'm likely to make a loss, so just before you step on stage, you have a word with yourself and go, why are you doing this? and then what I like to remind myself is that if I looked out behind that curtain and there was no one there and I didn't do the show, how I would feel. And I think that's really helpful because it then makes you realize how much you really want it, because you would be so disappointed to not perform and to go home having not done it.
It's so true, Jo. And I have a similar conversation with myself when I'm going to an audition and I'm feeling really anxious, or I can't find the venue, or whatever I'm having, and I just say, Kate, you can turn around and go home now. No one's putting a gun to your head. You don't have to go and do this audition. You can turn around and go home. and I never have.
No.
But that sort of somehow calms me down, and it's my choice. This is my choice. I'm choosing to go and do this because A, B, and C. You know?
But it's funny that you just feel momentarily trapped and terrified. It's a trap.
What the hell
It's a trap.
am I doing? Who would do this?
But it's a trap that you've set for yourself, so you can't really. It doesn't really make sense.
Exactly. What's that? They don't put your daughter on the stage.
Exactly right.
And yet here we all are.
Here we all are. So what's next for you?
The main thing I'm doing, I guess, is teaching at the moment. That's the main thing. I mean, I do have a website for my professional opera work, but there's not much on it at the moment. There's nothing going on. So yeah, I mean, if anyone wants a singing lesson, just, they can get in contact on Katrina Sheppeard on Facebook. But I'm hoping to do some more lectures. My next project for my MA is a research project. I'm going to be mapping the resonances of elite sopranos. That's my next project.
And what does that mean?
For
me and everyone else that won't understand that. Do you know what I was doing? I was nodding. You can't see this, listeners. I was nodding sagely as if I knew what that was, and then I thought, I haven't got the foggiest, so let's ask.
One of the amazing things that was such a incredible piece of information for me as a soprano that had been trained was to actually learn how and why that works. And we've got basically a tube in our throat, our vocal cord. From our vocal cords to our mouth, you can think of it like a long sort of trumpet, I guess. And it's got several resonances in it that boost the sound coming from the vocal cords, and that's what we train as sopranos. So traditionally you go to a singing teacher and you learn how to do that just by ear, but you can actually see that on this piece of software called a spectrograph. So I've been learning how to use that over the summer, and I'm going to be mapping those resonances of myself and other sopranos because most research has been done, of course, by men on men's voices. So I'm really interested to see what's happening in soprano voices.
Excellent.
So that will be my little research project.
That's blooming brilliant. Yeah, and so the only thing I can equate that to is when I was training as an actor in the vocal class, they showed us a clip of it looks like little butterfly wings in the back of your throat. I don't know what I can't remember, like your vocal cords when they're vibrating. Is it a similar? Yeah. Is that a similar thing, or is no?
Yeah, so you can think of like the vocal cords make the noise. So imagine like sort of two elastic bands sort of buzzing together, making a sort of sound.
Yeah.
But then above that you've got the vocal tract, which is like a tube, and that actually resonates the sound. So like if you blew into a tube.
So the tract is the trumpet then you was talking about.
Exactly. And so that resonates the sound, that makes the sound bigger and gives its particular timbre. So
does that would vary in people, and is that something that you can make bigger or improve?
Yeah, for sure. So you learn how to manipulate those resonances to make an operatic sound. And I'm absolutely no expert at all, or know very much about contemporary singing or music theatre singing, but it's similar. I mean, you tend to use microphones for that sort of singing, but it's particularly pertinent for operatic singing because we do have to produce a huge amount of resonance to get over like an 80-piece orchestra in a theatre. So it's quite interesting to study. Yeah,
it really is. So it really is, and who doesn't want to know how to manipulate their trumpet?
Exactly.
On that note, Kate. It's been a joy speaking to you, and thanks very much for coming on. And check out if you too at home want to manipulate your trumpet, give Kate a call. She's on Facebook, Kate Sheppeard, manipulator of trumpets.
That's it. That's the one.
Thanks for listening to Real Folk with me, Jo Burke.